Hello, welcome, good afternoon, everyone. I'm Chris Freeman, the publisher of udpride.com, and I'm being joined this afternoon by Neil Sullivan, University of Dayton Vice President and Director of Athletics. The format today is going to be really simple. We got a bunch of things we'd like to talk about, things that have gone on over the last 6 months. We'll try to get to all of them, but if we don't in the time allotted, we apologize for that. The conversation is going to be very casual. When Neil and I get together, we usually go off topic quite a bit and jump around, so expect that as well. But first, Neil, good to see you. Maybe before we get started and really jump into things, just kind of how are you doing personally? How's your family doing? Maybe give everyone just a quick status and well-being report of your staff there at UD.
Sure, we'll do, and appreciate the opportunity. Before I just talk about my family, I hope you don't mind me just passing on my condolences in regards, for your dad, Jerry. And for those that don't know, I got to know Jerry really well, really the last, 10, 15 years. And just a quick story, if you don't mind. And some people don't know because he didn't want a lot of credit for it. Neither did you. But back in, let's say mid 2000s, when RPI, was a really big deal, and we had kind of felt like we had cracked the RPI code, if you will. But I did that internally, as I like to say, on the back of a napkin. And so when we were actually kind of on the cutting edge of doing what we call RPI forecasting. If we played this opponent at home, neutral away, if we won, if we lost, what combination of games and scheduling would maximize our opportunity for wins, maximize our opportunity for strength of schedule, et cetera. And so one iteration of that could take me an entire day, a full day to go through that. And because I was using Excel, essentially like an abacus I was using at the time. And so I knew that you guys had behind your paywall, which I had never been back there, but I knew you had an RPI. And so I reached out to you and your dad, and I said, hey, I got this idea of how we can kind of make, can we do this in a computer and do this really quick? And I say, hey, what about this combination of games? What would it yield, et cetera? And so we started that, 10, 12 years ago, maybe longer. And we refined it. And, you and your dad were, a critique in a good way of the NCAA's official numbers, and you were kind of in their inner wheelhouse. And so I tell people that, especially for the last couple of years or 2015, 2014, when we were 11 seeds in the NCAA tournament, with no Jerry and Chris Riemann and some scheduling help, there's, the Flyers may not be in the NCAA tournament because every little inch mattered, especially when you're on the 11 line. So I just want to make sure you and your fans understood, the relationship that it had in that regard. I know you don't seek any attention for that, but just a great man, and we'll miss him, and just appreciate for having a chance to get to know him and the way we worked on the schedule together.
Yeah, it was a lot of fun, and it was great to have you give us some insight into just how difficult the scheduling process is. And I've tried to convey that to fans over the years, and just how complicated all the pieces are when you try to put them together. It's not just a matter of Team A wanting to play Team B and Team B wanting to play Team A. That's about one checkbox on a list of about 20 checkboxes that have to happen in order to get a game to occur. Yeah. And, there's just so many other things that are involved in that. But yeah, it was a great learning experience for the both of us. But at the same time, it was really interesting to almost act as our own, phantom athletic directors, to try to put our own schedules together and compare one bye team versus another bye team. Or if it was our decision, would we take a game and play it away where there's a 2-hop road game swing where you come back and only have 2 days to prepare for a really big opponent? Do you take that game and take the chance, or do you pass on it? It was really interesting to talk about all those possibilities over the years. And I think we got smarter about it every year, but I think things got a bit more complicated too, especially with the net and stuff. And we'll get into that probably later in the conversation as well. But yeah, it was really interesting to go through that. And we'll see what happens with the net stuff. Yeah. Perhaps our insight isn't as valuable as it was in the past, but we do appreciate you allowing us in and giving us a window on all of that.
Yeah, no, I couldn't do it. And over the years, I had schools reach out and they say, I hear you do all this, and how do you do it? And I would just say, I got people. And that's what I would leave it at. And, I said, we didn't commercialize it, we just kept it. But but yeah, my family's good, and our coaches and our staff, they're fighters. It's been a long 6 months. There's no doubt about it. We've been through, a lot just as a division, as a university, just even as a country. But we have wonderful people at the university, that I work with, both within athletics and around, and we're grinding each day.
So I guess the best place to start the conversation really is probably at the beginning. I guess for some fans that they probably look at it as the end, but that's back in March when things started to unravel. I guess the first question I have is when we look back on what happened in March. I mean, we were riding this 3 or 4 month wave where we're getting to this crescendo where everything was coming together and fans were just waiting for this big ending to happen. And all of a sudden, sort of the rug gets pulled out from under us. We had Shauna's team they were able to get their conference tournament played at UD Arena, and they won that and punched their automatic bid to the tournament, or so they thought. And then, of course, Anthony's team, 29-2, 18-0 in the A10, number 3 national ranking, 20-game winning streak, probably looking at a number 1 seed in the NCAA tournament. And then almost like in a matter of like 5 to 10 days, it went from things seemingly normal to just absolute chaos, and we're not looking at a postseason anymore. So like, how did, when you step back from it a little bit and you look at all those loose ends that were just left there that were untied, the unfinished business, what were your feelings sort of then as it was happening? And as you look at it over the last 6 months and get a bit more perspective, have any of those feelings changed since then?
Yeah, it's a tough question because, I think just in life or in sports, you're always trying to focus on the next play and try not to live too much in the past. At the same time, it's just really hard to ignore the past. I think we're all human. We all say things that we mean. And Anthony kind of had a quote that took off, which, things are bigger than basketball. And so we do believe that, but, I can only speak for myself and I think a few others that we're still human. And I'll go into an empty arena. This week I was over there and it kind of hits you and punches you in the stomach you kind of can picture that last weekend. And we had college game day on campus. We had a men's game against George Washington. We had the women's A10 tournament leading to a championship, and really just a remarkable weekend at the University of Dayton, and all that went into getting college game day here. And there was a lot of things to juggle. And their producer had said to me, we really lobbied and when we got them here and the experience they had, he said, this was a paradigm shift for us of just what we were able to do over at Frericks. And then you think back to it, and then immediately when that fell apart, you had to just go into operating mode of, how are we going to handle this? How are we going to handle that? How are we going to do all things? So you never really had a chance to really reflect, on it as time went on. And I go over to an arena, this summer that's empty and it shouldn't be empty. And you maybe see the TBT in Columbus and it should be at the UD Arena. So there's certain moments that you have that they sting, and they hurt a little bit. But at the same time, we try to choose to be grateful for what we did have. And the players on both the men's and women's team, just wonderful people, wonderful coaches. We got to be blessed by Obi Toppin and his performance, at Trey Landers, a Dayton kid, Ryan Mikesell, Coach Grant at his alma mater. So, I can't speak for others, but we ebb and flow between being grateful for what happened and that you had that opportunity. And then, every now and then you get stung a little bit and realize you got another mountain to climb. But I guess that's just a microcosm of life and everybody else. But it happened quick. And I remember where I was when I got the news of Rudy Gobert, and I knew. I went and met Coach in the hotel that night, and I said, "Hey, I don't think this is going to go the right way." Once that happened, and of course, it went from there. But he handled it, and Shauna handled it with the class that everyone would expect, and really proud of them, and proud of our staff for the way they've managed.
And that was you kind of leading into my next question is when the wheels started coming up. Obviously, we had a bunch of people outside of UD making decisions. You had mayors and governors coming in and making decisions with mandates and attendance and who can come into facilities and who can't. The social distancing thing started to come around. You've got people from a national standpoint trying to make decisions, the NCAA and so forth. So when in the first couple of days, as you saw things starting getting walked back a little bit, was there any optimism at all that maybe we could get this thing played, this postseason played in some fashion, some unique fashion? Or once that first or second domino fell, did you see it as like, these are just half measures, this is not going to happen?
Yeah, probably a little bit of both. I think I was in a unique position in that the NCAA, we were both going to be in the NCAA tournament and we're hosting the NCAA tournament. So I was in communication with Indianapolis and the folks at the NCAA and their medical panel about, kicking off the NCAA tournament in Dayton. So we were the very first site, the very first, place that it would happen. And so, I called them and I said, hey, heads up, our governor has made a recommendation. There's no fans. And it was kind of, no one had ever really experienced things like that. And then that slowly went from a recommendation to, I think within 24 hours, to essentially a mandate, an order. And, when it went that quick from a recommendation to a mandate, and then, talking to some of the public health people in the governor's office, I kind of, I remember getting on the plane to New York and I told Coach, I said, there's a chance this plane lands and turns right around. And I said, I just want to, I said, I went on getting all the details, but I just said some of the information that I'm getting. I said, we just got to prepare for that reality. And that was literally as I was boarding the plane in Dayton. So I had a little bit of longer arc, I think, than others. It still was very, very challenging. So I did have some optimism with the no fan route. For a while we thought that'd be really weird, to play with no fans, but I thought there was some optimism on that route. And then quickly, when you get into logistics and transportation, and at that time, availability of testing was just not even a conversation. It was, we talk about it now still today, but then it was, you would have to be, hospitalized and darn near on a respirator to get access to testing. And so when I understood that, I knew where I felt we were headed. And then the inevitability of it kind of sunk in.
And as difficult as it was for administrators like yourself and you're in the athletic department, and for coaches and for fans, obviously, it just had to be even just more difficult for the players because they're the ones that were closest to all this. It was their season. They wanted to play it out and finish what they started. So how did they sort of handle that? Obviously it's not the kind of news that you want to get, but how did they sort of handle it initially, and over the next couple of months, how they reacted to it?
I think they handled it, by their leadership of Anthony and Shauna. And, I gave them the space to do that. I was involved in some of the initial conversations with the team, which were quite emotional. And then I just kind of let the team have their space to process in the way that really only a team can do, and the core of the team and the core of the coaches. And I just kind of waited outside. I think kids, I call them kids, young men and women, they're resilient. I think the hard part was, some people have said to me, hey, this will never happen again. And I say, I understand what you're saying. It's once in a generation, best team in a long time. But I said, I'm not working here for this to be the only time that we're having this conversation. I said, so, I believe if you can do it once, it's possible to be done again. And we're on the prowl for the next Obi Toppin, the next Trey Landers, and the next opportunity to make history. And I felt kind of blessed to be able to have that opportunity to try to pursue that, where someone like Trey Landers, Ryan Mikesell, Obi Toppin, in the next chapter of their life, they really won't get a chance to do that again. And so I think that's a little bit different for them. From my perspective, I'm certainly not lost on me that you just don't recreate a season like we had, in a team and the chemistry and the players. And I'm not naive enough to say that that's just an annual occurrence. I understand the generational nature of that team, but I also know that I get another crack. I get another crack at it, and so do the adults in the room. But the players don't get that opportunity, and so that stings for them, and that's probably where we tried to put our focus, on them.
So when things started to really play out in mid-March and the wheels started coming off, I mean, I got to imagine that most athletic directors somewhere in their desk drawer or filing cabinet have like a worst case scenario field manual for athletic directors. But I don't imagine there's a chapter in there called viral pandemics where you can just leaf through it and figure out how to deal with this. So without any precedent to go on, I mean, how did you like initially just triage this problem? And you've got the canceled seasons, you've got player and health safety you have to deal with. There's social distancing guidelines coming down from the state. All these curveballs are coming your way. You probably have academic considerations you have to account for now. So you're juggling all these balls in the air at the same time. So did you have to just sort of like learn on the job, or was there anyone or anything that you could lean on resource wise just to give you any bit of guidance to try to navigate your way through this at the beginning?
There's certainly no playbook, and we were, as people, you've heard people say, you know, building the airplane as you're flying it, or whatever analogy you want to use. I think the one thing that is a strength of the university is, you know, the power of people, and whether it's a personal situation, you know, a personal triumph or tragedy that's best achieved as a team, that's best achieved with people that you trust and love and care for. And so we're fortunate to have that both on our athletic staff and the way we operate, and the team that surrounds me. In addition to that, you know, our senior leadership team of the university, you know, President Spina, Andy Horner. I mean, I could go on, Paul Benson, people that everyone just kind of united. And so, you know, by no means was I able to kind of keep those things organized, you know, by itself, but we did that together as a team. And then our fans, I think that, you know, we joke about it and we talk about the Flyer faithful and stuff, but, you know, I hope fans truly believe in that level of partnership, because, you know, the outpouring that our players got from the fans and our coaching staff, and the support, and whether that was just remotely, that was on social media, we never got a chance to celebrate the team. You know, it just kind of ended, and we thought, well, maybe that will be soon. And so you plan for things. And I share, I mean, the university initially, and as most universities did, just told kids maybe plan on an extra week or two for spring break. Yeah. I mean, that was it. And then spring break became the entire semester, and then the semester became summer. So you just didn't know when there was an end, and we still clearly don't know that. So, yeah, that's been challenging. So I would just say the playbook is probably as old as, you know, as old as recorded history of businesses, that just, you know, quality people. And when you're in challenging time, try and surround yourself with people that can, you know, accelerate the process and be partners. So that's probably the only thing I knew what to do. I didn't know what else to do other than to surround myself with people that could help make some of these, you know, difficult decisions that were headed our way.
And you kind of touched on it a second ago, but a lot of fans have been asking over the last few months, you know, they felt like when the season ended, there was just no finality to it. And there was no real way to sort of like celebrate the accomplishments of Sean and Anthony's team. So I don't know if that's anything that you guys have thought about on how to properly do that, even like when it could happen, if it could happen, what it might look like. And I mean, it feels like the student athletes never really had a chance to be acknowledged for everything they did, because the season just got canceled so abruptly. And I think that if nothing else, the fans would like to celebrate with them and acknowledge the great season that they
had. No question. And, you know, we had multiple different versions of plans, ranging from, you know, things at the arena to, you know, parades, you know, and all of the things in between, and had gotten down the path and had tried to have some shelf ready. And then just as time goes on, the circumstances just keep changing that make that more difficult, that makes, you know, players that have given different opportunities, whether that's, you know, a men's player or a women's player that, you know, is back in their hometown or training for the next level, mixed with public health, mixed with trying to gather people. So it's something that we actually had some operational plans for in a number of different ways. And then, you know, frankly, we ended up putting them on the shelf a little bit, you know, probably when we got to around the 4th of July, and just realized, you know, that we're not headed in the direction for all that to happen. But, you know, it's something that we will find a way to do in the right way, and do it appropriately and correctly for both the men and women. What that exactly looks like, you know, I don't know, because I think the plans that we had just aren't relevant anymore. But the one thing I do know is we want to do that the right way. And I think it'll be a very long standing ovation whenever we're able to do that, and we can make sure that that everybody that should be recognized is able to be present and accounted for, and do that, because I think two things can be true. You can recognize your successes and you can still look to the future. So it's not like we're trying to go back always to 2020 and live in the past, but it would be it just wouldn't be right for some of these players to not have a chance to give that wave on senior day. That was one thing, but they thought there was going to be more. Yeah. So I would definitely plan to do that at some point.
Is it possible, once the smoke clears and all this stuff, and we eventually get past the COVID, whether it's 6 months, 12 months, 2 years from now, whenever it is, that you can look back on this and, as an athletic director, as a leader, look on it and say, there are some tangible things that we went through with this pandemic, even though it was difficult, and we don't ever want to have to go through it again if we don't have to, but there are some things we may have learned about ourselves that maybe will prepare us in case there's another catastrophe or crisis in the future. Are there skill sets or tools that maybe your staff developed that maybe you guys didn't even know you had, but learning on the job, you sort of just had to work these problems out as you went, and now you can look back on it and think, we're even more talented than perhaps we thought we were. And if something like this happens again, we're going to be so much more prepared and ready to tackle it at the beginning, knowing that we don't have to learn on the job quite as much anymore.
Yeah, absolutely. And I certainly hope it's not a pandemic, but in any curveballs that get thrown, I think, we've, when I'd say in the first couple of days of this, and I tried to have, staff meetings weekly, maybe multiple times a week. And I said, look, there are some schools out there, kind of the big Power 5 schools, that are aircraft carriers. And I said, we have the power of a really agile speedboat that we're able to pivot and we're able to be nimble and adapt. So we're going to be nimble. We're going to change. We're going to modify. And, I think that we're big enough to be nationally relevant, but we're small enough to be able to make tight turns. And so I think what I saw our staff do, and frankly, our university do, there had been a 3-year initiative to move classes online, and if you needed to, and they did it in 2 weeks. We switched. There's not been a recruiting visit on or off campus since March 13th. That dead period extends the whole way into January. So coaches have been able to find ways to recruit, to evaluate players over Zoom, like we're doing now. We have been able to really understand some of the challenges that our players have. You're able to dive into issues that maybe you didn't have time to do during a season. We've had a lot of our players are very, very passionate about anti-racism and the social justice issues, and coaches have been able to spend time on that. Their professional development for things away from their sport, things that you're able to do that didn't require physically training. So I think we did learn stuff about our organization, about our people, and about our ability to pivot. If they say, what necessity is the mother of all innovation, or however that quote goes. I mean, we lived that, and we made modifications. We adapted as a division, and we can't wait for it to be over, because sports requires physical connection. It's very difficult, other than golf and perhaps tennis and some running sports. It requires contact. It requires the breaking down of social distancing barriers. It requires fans are part of it. And so there's cruises, there's airlines, and there's like sports right behind it, in terms of you need people. So that we don't want to do that again, but no doubt that we try to find opportunity in everything, and we certainly did find opportunity, and we'll continue to find it as best we can.
When we look at the window from after the season ended in March to the end of the academic calendar in May, how did you sort of limp that dog home from March to May to kind of just get everybody through their, they're student athletes, they have responsibilities on the academic side. That became, priority. I mean, it's always priority number one, but even more so to just get through these things like you talked about with online learning. You had social distancing now that's taking place on campus and in classrooms and stuff. So there's all these considerations that are happening, and probably too as well in your office. You know, you're dealing with COVID considerations and distancing and masking up, and you guys are such a tight-knit group in there that work closely together. I'm sure there were considerations that you had to be accountable for there as well. So were there any priorities from March to May to kind of just like, okay, these are the 2 or 3 bullet point items that we need to focus on, and everything just gets put to the side? So let's just get through May and get the academic calendar behind us, and then we can worry about everything moving forward.
Yeah, it's a good question. I think there were 2 things that we were primarily focused on in that time was, finishing academically strong and getting the young men and women to graduation that were poised to graduate. Could not have this disrupt them to be able to get that to graduation. At the same time, those young men and women that are thinking about graduation, are hearing that they could get another season of eligibility. Their season was disrupted. So now do you graduate? Do you enroll in grad school? Do you get a second major? How do you do all that? Coaches are saying, okay, is this person coming back, but am I still recruiting? How does this work with our financial aid limits and our scholarship limits? And so you have all that mix. So that was one big pile. And then candidly, it's not something we've talked about publicly too much, but, I knew what a massive financial implications this was going to be. We lost millions of dollars off from the NCAA tournament. Whether that's the things we were hosting at the arena, all the events, the first 4, the NCAA tournament, our participation in the NCAA tournament, the financial implications were going to be very, very significant. So we went through an exercise where, we had to figure out what we were going to do in order to drop our costs and to try to weather this storm. It had been widely reported that, the university had pretty significant layoffs and furloughs that began the end of April, and athletics was certainly part of that. We furloughed almost 53% of our staff, and those are really, really tough things to do, especially over Zoom. When you're not with people. So we took a big hit. We felt that we had to be bold, aggressive, early to be able to manage payroll with the university and to be ahead of it. And so we were really focused in the springtime, was focused primarily around the care of our staff and how we were going to, position this throughout the summer with some very difficult and challenging personnel situations. And then also making sure that the young people we serve were going to finish out academically strong, graduate, and then try to have an idea of what they may do with their future in terms of returning to school, not returning to school. Baseball players saying, do I go to the minor leagues? Do I come back? How does all this work? And so I think that period was mostly focused on those 2 things.
And did the academic side steer most of this? Were you kind of taking your orders from them, or were you working together on this? How did that work?
I think it was just a collaborative effort. I mean, we had to. The academic staff we have is amazing. They're the best in the business, and so they were able to keep kids on track. And the professors, I think, by and large, were super supportive and really cooperative. And so we just did whatever we could do to support and try and keep the student athletes positive. To say, look, the best thing you can do right now is win in the classroom. Stay focused. Get to graduation or get to the end of the semester, and then we will see what summer brings, and then we will see what fall brings. So we just tried to make those guideposts. I know you're a runner, and you just get to the next mile marker and evaluate from there. So there was very little, I like to think that we try to think ahead in our organization and look out 3 years, 4 years, 5 years. We believe in the long term, but long term was about 24 hours back in April and May.
Yeah.